Katie Dayton at the Wall Street Journal said I should make a children's book, which I think would be fitting. I thought that was funny.
You thought you should do a media people children's book?
Well, yeah, about all the different archetypes in like media land. And so that way we can, instruct young people and be able to find media an attractive field to go into.
I like it.
Sounds like a dark tale.
It's like the Brothers Grimm. Welcome to People vs. Algorithms. I'm Brian Morrissey, joined as always by Troy Young and Alex Schleifer. This is one of our last episodes of the year, I think. We've got, one more? Maybe two more?
We're doing one on Christmas Day, right?
One more.
I'll do it on Christmas Day. I'm going to be in a retirement community, but that's fine.
You should do it. You should bring your mother or father on. That'd be great.
Hey, yeah, sure. No, my mom has some always has, and my dad, but my mom in particular would be a good character.
Do you think she has like a hot take on the Netflix-Warner thing?
Yeah, she would. But she would like she's like very much, I got like sort of my common sense from Nancy Morrissey. She's very attuned to the vibes before they were vibes. I remember She predicted the financial crisis 2 years before it
and
happened.
She's like a Catholic Republican? Like Republican?
Hard to say now. I'm detecting a vibe shift. I think Trump is losing a lot of his base. And honestly, I think when it does happen, I think it's going to inevitably be from the coarseness. I think that's going to be the thing that caused a lot of people, particularly among the older parts of his base, to eventually turn against him. But I sense that there is a little bit of a vibe shift out there. And, you obviously see it in a lot of the polling numbers. So that is my prediction for 2026. Are we going to do a predictions episode? We should.
I think that's what we're doing. Next week, we're doing a prediction of law.
Okay. So we have a lot to discuss today. That's something that every podcast has to say.
A lot going on out there, Brian.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode.
It's going to be a great episode. So I want to talk about this Warner Brothers deal. It's now a political football. Netflix came in with a big offer, but then Paramount and David Ellison and his dad are trying to come over the top. This is a stimulus package for media reporters. It's going to be going on for a year plus. AB has plenty of time to go over the original documents to come up with deal points to discuss. We can talk about it really more from what it all means. I like that. I think this is probably the fitting end to the Hollywood model in some ways, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then we've got a lot of other things to discuss because I want to talk about Deal Guys because, Troy, I know you have prepared. Do not go into it now because I know you're ready to. You've prepared a little hagiography for David Zaslav, great man. And we're going to be talking about font wars. And
I can't wait to talk about fonts. Alex, did you bone up on fonts?
Alex knows all about fonts.
I'm constantly boned up on fonts.
Australia is boning up on social media bans for teens. It seems like a good idea to me, to be honest with you. I want to talk a little bit about live shopping and texting and whether these are new areas, and Substack brokering ad deals. And finally, the pivot to pull-ups. Pull-ups are in the news now.
I don't think Alex or I could do a single pull-up.
And I'm going to make the case for why you should be able to do not just one pull-up, but you should be able to do, as a man, I think you should be able to do 10 pull-ups in one go.
10 pull-ups.
It's a reasonable ask. You will get there. I'll tell you how to get there. I'm not like...
I'm getting a sauna. I think that will help.
Well, you got to be limber. Yeah. That's good. Let's talk about this big deal. We talked about it a little bit last week. I want to talk about it from the lens of the Hollywood model because it has been under compression like all of media. And to me, the thing that really has put it on its back foot obviously was streaming, right? It snapped the spine of Hollywood's distribution monopoly because it did away with scarcity. We talk about it a lot on this podcast. And, the cable bundle was amazing economics and, the scale logic ended up flipping. And we talk all about controlling the interface layer and technology increasingly obviously controls that interface layer. So I think it would be fitting if it went to Netflix, because the high cost Hollywood model is losing out. I mean, when they're going to go to the regulators, the first thing you do is you're going to expand the market definition. And I think there's a really good case to be made to expand that market definition. The competition out there is clearly from YouTube, it's from TikTok, and people are voting, with their attention with this, what we used to call UGC. Troy, break this down. Is this the end of the Hollywood model?
What do you mean by the Hollywood model, Brian?
Well, I think, Hollywood had a really good business model for a long time, right? And it's a high cost business model. It's centered in IP. It's centered in high cost talent. Just literally creating, the moat that was being able to create entertainment was a very expensive endeavor. I mean, we've seen this happen with publishers. It was always don't get on the wrong side of someone who owns like a printing press. Well, that's no longer leverage.
You bring that up because it has been interesting to what extent the kind of video world broadly has mimicked all of the industrial shifts and pain that has been experienced in what was before the print world that became the digital world, right? Like, we've already seen that kind of consolidation. We bought Meredith at Hearst. Dotdash bought Time, Vox bought New York Magazine, Penske bought Rolling Stone, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, South by Southwest. So we've seen that kind of pressure shift the market. I don't know. I think, I guess this is a more tectonic shift than media has ever experienced. It does go through waves of kind of shifting between stable distribution and the kind of oligopolistic structure that it creates to periods of, consolidation and chaos. And underneath of it all, I suppose that some things don't change, right? Which is that certain types of people are put on the planet to make media. And those are media people or entertainment people, and they will continue to do it. And I think that, it's a series of kind of overlapping shifts. Nothing kind of ever disappears. We still play vinyl and we listen to digital music, and we kind of work our way into the next era. I think the logic, is going to be that the scarce resources, time and attention, and that is a robust, highly competitive market, and streaming is one of it. The other side of it is that, I think professional content and streaming is a category. It's a tough one because it is conceivable that Netflix has a lot of market power in that professional realm of what you call the old Hollywood model, right? So they're going to have a tremendous amount of influence in what gets made and how we look at entertainment. And it would be nice, I think, to have, call it 4 players in the streaming world competing for opportunities to make entertainment in different points of view. So that would be, Disney, Paramount, NBC, and Netflix. I'm kind of torn on this one, Brian, because in some ways, the Paramount deal makes more sense. Although
for whom?
How does that make more sense?
Well, it gives us, wow, this is good. So we have another competitor in the marketplace, right? Because Paramount is subscale. I don't think that they have a kind of adequate flywheel to bring people into a subscription interface today. They need more scale there. I wouldn't mind watching as CNN was collapsed with CBS News and watch that drama unfold underneath of Barry Weiss. I think that would be interesting.
Okay, so you're a narrative case. I like that.
Yeah, and I think that Netflix is fine. I think they're going to, kind of carry on and do what they do. And I don't, of course it would be nice for them to have this kind of vast global library and to see what they would do with The Sopranos and Game of Thrones and all of that. But, having a strong additional streaming competitor spending money in Hollywood wouldn't be a bad idea. I'm separating it all from, like, how do you feel about, the players involved and the political surround of it all. Like,
forget the players, because on one level, I also think, yes, it would be great to have more competition, but the Paramount deal would involve synergies that would cut a bunch of stuff out of Warner. Like, it would gut, because there's so many redundancies between those two companies. They do exactly the same thing, right? They would take on more debt.
That's a logic. Isn't that like a deal line? We'll get into the deal guys, but
sure, but like,
synergies,
I think on
in quotes.
Yeah. But at least under Netflix, like what happens there, I think, is that Netflix gets a lot of new stuff that they don't have today, right? Netflix maybe gets pulled into the theater industry a little bit, right? Because, that's at least for a few years. And maybe maybe theaters and Netflix and the other streamers start talking about how this whole thing can work. Because right now, it's like they're all in this standoff where people are refusing to play movies if it's not going to be 45 days. And, the whole industry needs to shift. So I don't think it's automatically better if Paramount gets it. It would have been better if, somebody with maybe Apple, so it created a little bit more of like a separate player. But Paramount, I think, could be a disaster for a brand that's been bounced about and mishandled for a long time, and then then gets riddled with more debt and from money that comes from God knows where. I don't think the Netflix deal is bad. I think maybe it rips the Band-Aid and Hollywood can start reconfiguring around the new reality, right?
I don't know if either.
It's almost like you cheering for tech power, which I surprises me a little.
I don't know why I'd do that.
I don't know why you would either.
Well, look who's on the other side. Look who's on the other side of the bet.
I think would say that, at the same time, the thing that,
who else has the money to do, but like, let's talk about this
Saudis,
stuff, right? Like who else has the,
I like that
infrastructure?
Saudis are going to dump a bunch of money into our entertainment business. I like that personally. I think the more economic entanglement we have, the less conflict we have.
Sure.
So put some more, get completely.
Yeah, but like, it's.
I'm sure that we're not going to see that Khashoggi movie anytime soon.
Yeah, that's fair.
That
thing got memory hold really quickly.
Yeah. Or did it take a long time? I don't know. I mean, lots of people die in international conflict, right? I mean, it's mistakes were made.
Mistakes were made. Okay.
Wow.
He was just a contributor.
Yeah. Wow.
What did Trump say? A lot of people didn't like him. Yeah, look, this deal is, and I think the Paramount counter that they came with, a lot of that is, people within Hollywood, it's hard to pick a side necessarily, because obviously there's flaws on the Netflix side. Immediately, I'm reminded of magazines transition, because it's always like, what about the theaters? And it reminds me of being at a magazine when a new owner would come in, they'd be like, what about the magazine? What about the magazine? And, part of that is a lot of these media industries are driven by nostalgia to some degree. The theater, has a role to play, and I would rather have Netflix try to figure it out really than the Ellisons. I think they might have a better shot.
And I get a sense that I don't have any inside information on any of this stuff, but I get a sense that like path the theaters are taking right now is still kind of holding on to this old model, right? Of like the 45-day thing, and they only show movies and stuff like that. And
you can reserve seats now.
There's way too many screens, and I think all of that needs to be reconfigured. Maybe we need less theaters that are higher quality. I think a lot of them are, it's way too expensive for what you get.
You shouldn't be able to eat dinner in the theater, by the way. That's gross. It's gross.
Certain rooms. I love a Alamo Draft House, and I get my chicken fingers.
I don't want someone eating a hamburger beside me while
you
I'm
live in the
watching
suburbs, don't you?
No, this is gross. It's gross.
Do you go to Top Golf?
No, this is a nice like theater chain here. No, but isn't there like other things that the thing that surprised me always with theaters is that there doesn't seem to be much innovation or trying stuff out, right? Like, why am I not able to see like the final 3 episodes of Severance at the theater? Like, why isn't this happening? It's because
I have an idea. Start the movies on time.
Start the movies on time. Don't put
This
me.
is my
don't put half
innovation.
an hour event.
This is my innovation. I went to a movie theater for the first time in like 10 years. And I'm like, and I was surprised to have reserved seats, but I was horrified that they had not fixed the fact that the movie starts like a half hour after.
I'm Alex. I would say I'm not worried about it, and I'm not worried about it because as AI eliminates the amount of time that we have to work, people are going to need things to do. They're going to go to the cinemas.
Yes.
First of all, I think you're going to see more sort of programming innovation there, and then on the other side, I'm reminded, and I'll bring this up in Good Product, but I watched the fabulous Scorcese, Mr. Scorcese documentary on Apple TV, which is amazing. People find ways to make entertainment. When he made After Hours, after a kind of Hollywood shunned him, and he made it in New York City for like $1 million, and it was a terrific movie because it was a great story led by a brilliant auteur. Like, that's going to happen. I look at things like, do you know who this Michelle Khare is? Khare. She's a YouTube creator. I mean, we have enterprising people on YouTube recreating Tom Cruise's airplane stunt. Like, when he hangs onto the side of the airplane in Mission Impossible. Like the ambition of people that want to make content with some mechanism for monetization is unending, and it will always happen. And so, I do think that we will continue to be well served from an entertainment perspective, whatever happens with this deal. I really do.
Right. But that's derivative content. I mean,
but it couldn't. The thing is that it couldn't happen because of the way Hollywood is set up. Like, you couldn't go out and make a $500,000 movie, I don't know, that maybe wasn't part of SAG and didn't kind of get roped up in all this type of stuff and end up having a movie playing at theaters, even if it was a great movie most of the time. Like, a basic comedy cost $40 million to make. That's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Is it?
It's also a sign of the power of deal guys. As mentioned, I wrote a little bit about deal guys. We've talked about them here, and it's a controversial topic because Troy, I think, is spiritually a deal guy. And although you have your DNA is as a creator and builder, but I think that you're in the deal guy.
Well, here's where there's a flaw in your logic, because deal guys are creators.
They're artists, right? So,
they're artists. Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Explain that a little bit.
Like, it's called creative accounting.
I mean, a deal guy made you rich, Alex.
Deal guys are very good with generating capital.
That doesn't mean he's an artist.
Everything is an asset class, right? And I think this is part of David Zaslav is a deal guy. And Troy, you have been on a soapbox in our WhatsApp and really demanding that we recognize the brilliance of David Zaslav, because he has, as a deal guy, pulled off seemingly quite a coup. I don't think, if you rewound, I certainly wouldn't have expected that he would position this quote unquote asset to be in this bidding war. We're now over $100 billion with the Paramount hostile bid. And he had an assignment, and he did a great job, right? So Troy, give us your assessment of the coup that David Zaslav pulled off, and importantly, why we should consider deal guys as at least artist adjacent. I mean, because I guess my working thing is, before you go, my working
thing I just want to set up that really bugs me is when people that don't understand the kind of bigger picture of a sort of fundamental and structural corporate challenge, like the cubicle class, which I'll refer to you guys as,
that is so condescending, and I think you're being so naive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't Alex have a family office?
You gotta
cubicle
start having
class.
drinks with people who are not just disgruntled executives, dude.
First of all, I rented a conference room in an Industrious. I'm out of the cubicle.
Okay,
go on.
So I'll take that back. You got a blank piece of paper in front of you, and your company is facing a slow death, and your investors are extremely difficult because they're accustomed to cable cash flows, and you're sitting there and you're saying, what am I going to do as we shift to this kind of new streaming world where we have to go direct to consumer, which is a fundamentally different industrial logic for a media company. And you're like, well, I need a bunch of library. I need a bunch of IP. I need to make long form entertainment. I need media brands. I have none of that. And you step out and you say, I'm going to get a deal done. And I think that this asset that was, probably not, there's a long, long history, which we can get into, of industrial companies and other types of companies buying entertainment companies. It's happened forever. AT&T made a transaction, probably should never have owned Warner. Zaslav goes in, gets the deal done, buys it for $40 billion, has to take on a bunch of debt, is about to sell it for 2.5 times that. And we're not talking flipping it like a little tiny $1 million investment. Let me finish, Alex.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about a $60 billion delta. Okay.
It's incredible.
Now, let's get into some other fundamentals. And you're going to say, well, he didn't make anything and he could hardly execute a brand shift.
No, he did make something. He took out a Sharpie. He had a thing, and then he scratched out HBO from the thing, and then just saw Max, and then rebranded.
He assassinated Batgirl too.
He took movies out of. He took content. He took like hundreds of like Sesame Street episodes off the thing. Right, like the way I see
your content point of view. He made Minecraft. They made Superman. They made Sinners. They made F1. They made weapons. They made
he had nothing to do with that. It was in spite of him.
He's not the director, man. He's not the entertainment guy.
But he's the creative. Like what he did, he bought a. You know what he did? He bought like a skyscraper on Central Park West, right? And he took a bunch of massive dumps in it, and then 5 years later, he sells it for more money. Guess what?
That's what deal guys do. That's what deal guys do. That's the assignment.
He managed to juggle like that hot potato for 5 years, rebranding, taking stuff out of commission, putting stuff back in, and stumbling into it. And now he's a fucking artist.
You took VRBO, copied it, and made it a little better, and it got you a family office. Okay, don't tell me about sort of conceptual arbitrage here. Like
that was First of all, that's insulting. The Airbnb was regulatory arbitrage.
Okay, great.
That wasn't fun. Like I think lawyers actually are real artists here.
Well, lawyers are consummate. He's a lawyer, right? Lawyers are, deal guys are often lawyers.
Cut costs, still made better movies, grew the subscribers, turned a $40 billion asset into a bidding war and $100 billion asset, stumbled with CNN, admittedly, which is a toxic asset.
Well, whatever happened to the Discovery stuff? He wanted to merge the Discovery Channel with HBO. That was the grand vision.
That was a little bit of that's a classic media stumble.
HBO Max is not, it's not great now.
Except for the tech stuff. Like you're talking about this guy being a creative, all of the creative.
I'm not talking about him being a creative. Brian is equating deal guys with creative guys. I think that there's creativity in doing a deal. I'm saying that David Zaslav created a lot of wealth for a lot of people and he'll get paid for it.
For sure. That's his assignment. That's his assignment. That was the job.
And what I'm saying is the view from, the CEO's office.
I wish I would have been on that. I wish I would have, like, that sounds like a great job, man.
But Troy, let's be real.
For a few years,
you couldn't do that job, Alex. You have too big a heart. You couldn't do the job. You're too sensitive. It's not your thing.
Like, what do you mean, like sit on it? No, I could have rebranded it and canceled some shows and then, I guess I'll sell it. Yeah, I guess I'll. It doesn't sound that hard to me, bro.
Look, I think AB, when we discussed this in the group chat, AB made it, I thought, a really good point, is that, deal guys generally do really well financially, like really well, okay? But socially, they don't have the same social capital as builders, as makers, right? So like Elon Musk is the prototypical builder. No matter what you think about his personality or his politics, he builds stuff. He put like there's rockets going through the sky and whatnot. And, makers, they make art, they make cultural objects. And I think that has and should be accorded a great admiration, even if they don't get the same amount of financial remuneration as deal guys.
It's a good example because I think there's no love lost for Elon Musk from me, but he's also somebody that's not like a traditional maker. He makes shit happen, right? He's not really the engineer, right? A lot of these things, including, but I'm not putting this as a criticism. I actually am saying there is a type of person that takes a business, both Tesla and Starlink and stuff that had other people behind it, and makes something potentially or likely bigger than they would have been without it. I think Steve Jobs was also not a maker, but he managed to create something that was hugely, financially rewarding as well, because he put these things together. He understood marketing. He understood market dynamics, right? I think somebody like Zaslav operates in one dimension, which is like, give me a spreadsheet and I'll make the number go up.
He's a financializer.
That was the
right?
best.
He's a financializer.
Exactly.
He's a guy who looks at an asset and is like, how am I going to derive
100%.
the most value out of this
100%.
asset? And I think the struggle here, Troy, for a lot of people in the cubicle class that I'll speak for, is this is fundamentally an extractive process. And
yes.
I understand, I'm not naive. Capitalism is about extracting value out of assets. I think there is a case to be made that not everything needs to be purely an asset class to be extracted. And we see across the overall economy, this financialization of everything. Like everything has become an asset class. Kalshi is out there saying that every human decision in which there is any sort of difference of opinion is actually an asset class to be financialized. Let's just think about that for a minute.
I mean, I think you're very confused, to be honest. You're talking about very different. You're talking on one hand about the financialization of everything and this kind of betting culture. On the other hand, you're talking about massive structural shifts that need to take place on account of technology pushing a new structure in the entertainment world, and someone needs to come along, break it apart, and create something new.
Sure, my man,
you can live inside of it. No,
I do apologize. You're right. No,
well, you're interrupting me. Why are you interrupting?
Okay, go. Please go.
And then you're equating that with something I think quite nefarious, which is that we bet on everything.
Nefarious.
Well, all betting on everything is the next form of entertainment engagement.
Let me try to reframe what Brian said. I think we do live in times where everything is. So the extractive nature of business has always been around, but we've gotten to a time where we feel like it is so inevitable and that it is just so normalized that everything is extractive. Everything is extractive right now, right? And when we see talk about somebody like David Zaslav, that the best that one could do with these assets was apply these extractive principles of financializing, and then kind of moving stuff around. And now it's worth 100 billion. But there is no history where you put somebody creative who turns this into a successful business and it's worth $200 billion by being a successful media business, or even doesn't need to get sold. That Zaslav was the only one that could do his thing.
Complete fantasy land.
That is not
cubicle.
Really
fantasy. It really, if we could only be a little more creative, we could turn our dying cable company that only exists because of one sort of industrial structure. We could turn it into something more creative and wonderful.
Hey man,
only there were more people like me inside of that company.
I mean, and then yet we forget that Netflix turned a DVD by mail service into the company that's now buying this thing.
And Netflix was a completely different company than Discovery, completely different stakeholders.
And when we talk about things like Kalshi, it's just it's pervasive now. Everything feels extractive. If you look at what even being a social media, creator is, you turn on TikTok or Instagram, everybody's trying to extract something out of everybody. Everything's being financialized. And I think stuff like Kalshi is it's just a representation of the type of world we live in, where we've created this kind of Thunderdome type situation where everybody's trying to extract the value out of everything. Companies are just nobody cares anymore about building good shit or not just
I don't think that. How can you say that? There's lots of good shit being made. Really? There's lots of good shit. There's lots of good movies. There's lots of good television. There's lots of good consumer products. There's lots of good food products. There's lots of good restaurants. I don't know what you're talking about. I really don't know what you're talking about. And if you want to move to like Sicily and like, have a
I would
much
love
different
to.
lifestyle,
That
I
sounds
think
nice.
that
I mean, you know what?
mean,
Actually, that's probably
America's
what
always been extractive, man.
that's probably what David Zaslav's gonna do now, because that's where all the rich Americans go after they make
Gonna
money.
buy
Move
Sicily.
to Italy. It's a great example, actually. Like,
I would actually
I
put
choose to
in-
live here because I love it here.
I would put in contrast like his approach to like Jason Kilar's, right? So he effectively replaced Jason Kilar. And I think of Jason Kilar as a product guy, not a deals guy. And he was making bold product decisions, and I think they were necessary for the future. For instance, he was saying day and date movie releases, that he was going to release their film slate in 2021 on HBO Max simultaneously with their theatrical
Jason
release.
Kilar's tombstone will read, "I tried and I failed." Okay, I understood the problem, but the problem was bigger than me, right? Like, what he tried to do is bring a bunch of people that hate each other, that have competing interests and are not aligned, into a single streaming structure called Hulu. And it was like the right idea, but completely impractical, right? Because it didn't work, right? It just got tossed around and now, got discarded to Disney. Like, I don't understand how that is. He is a product guy. I'm sure he's a product guy. He's a nice guy. I like him. But like, I don't understand how that's in any way analogous here. He was asked to build a multi-brand streamer. That's it.
By the way, the problem with Warner Brothers was started by deals guys, right? Time, AOL, fucking trying to shift all that stuff around. Maybe this brand didn't need to be merged into a bunch of different companies. And maybe the thing that didn't work was that you had all these assets kind of like, and I know that there was no other ways to make it work. And yeah, and this is why tech is running laps around media, because the only way we can fix things is by fucking extracting the last value out of that orange.
Right.
And then it'll be done.
I would only get you to consider this respectfully. And I think that AT&T bought Warner Brothers at exactly the wrong time of massive disruption in the industry. But there is a long, long history, as I said before, of industrial companies successfully owning media companies. Your Vivendi, which was a French utility company, owned Universal Music. Gulf and Western, right, which was an industrial company, owned Paramount forever. Westinghouse owned CBS. Sony was an electronics company, owned Columbia Pictures. Panasonic owned MCA Universal. Seagram owned Universal. Verizon owned AOL. That didn't go very well, right? Comcast still owns NBC. Amazon owns MGM. So there's a long history of either people wanting vanity assets or choosing to use their hard-earned industrial cash flows for entertainment companies with success.
Can we talk about a different deal guy for a minute? I want to talk about David Ellison, because he's the other deal guy in here. He's like a wet behind his ears deal guy. He's like 42. I was struck. So he does not come out of this like great, because I'm not a deal guy. Maybe you can give us the insight. It seems like he completely mishandled this negotiation that was presumed that Paramount was in the pole position for this. I love this, and this is why I say it's a stimulus package for media reporters, is because of like the text messages are all like coming out. It's very strange. He does British. He spells like honor with O-U-R. I don't know. Is that like a billionaire sort of tick? I'm not really sure.
It's a Canadian way of spelling it, actually.
Is he Canadian?
No, but he respects the Canadians.
So I think he probably lost a little juice. I don't know how, again, like I don't know how the deal guy thing operates, but I think bringing your father to the deal dinner is interesting. I mean, it's a very millennial trait. He's an elder millennial. He's 42. He's still in the millennial. And we still always get the stories about millennials bringing their parents to job interviews. So he brought his dad to the negotiation. It didn't work out. And so now he's gone hostile. How do you appraise him as a deal guy, Troy?
I mean, remarkable.
Remarkable. He's remarkable too. Okay.
I mean, guys, everybody wants to
truly an artist.
Another.
Truly an
Michelangelo.
Artist.
We got Da Vinci. We got Michelangelo.
Brian, have you ever had to talk to your dad and ask him for billions of dollars? You don't fucking understand how hard that is. That is so hard.
No, I don't. No, I don't bring my dad to meetings.
I mean,
At
Alex,
this stage, I'm just trying to get
you
Troy.
play the hand you dealt.
I'm just trying
He's
to
a
get,
Nepo baby, guys. I mean, listen. So what? It's what he's got. It's
He's what he's got.
It's what he's got. Why not?
I mean, at least you know what? He loves movies. You know, he's kind of a guy that wants to make movies.
yeah.
So
I would argue he built a interesting media company, and he's like, well, I am a Nepo baby, and I do have access to billions of dollars of capital. I should go and build this because streaming is a scaled game. So I'm going to go out. I'm going to buy Paramount. That was a torturous deal. He got it done. And then now he's got to kind of disrupt the news side. It's super messy. He's trying to do that. And now he's going out and trying to add scale to it and IP. I mean, why? So what? So what? It's like that's his role in life.
Yeah, no, I get it.
What
I
do
would
you want
just
him to do, Alex?
just-
What do you want David Ellison to do? Crawl under a rock and like get a cocaine problem? Like, what do you want him to do, man?
He could be on a yacht in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, but
and
that's
instead,
not life, man. I mean,
he's
what do you want him
accumulating
to do?
assets. That's fine. I would say he's not building anything. However, I would just
I
make
don't
a
want him to do
little
anything. I mean, I think it's fine. Like whatever he wants to do is fine.
collecting assets.
It's kind of
is
weird
not-
that
is not
like
the
I mean
same
the
as
amount
building.
of I'm just looking at that deal and the amount of debt, the amount of redundancy, the size of Paramount compared to Warner Brothers, like that absorption feels kind of crazy. I think for Hollywood, Netflix is probably the best. I know Hollywood kind of hates the Netflix deal, but I think it kind of. Oh yeah, I mean they don't
ended
want
the
change.
gravy train, Alex. What are you talking about?
But that's what I'm saying. That's great. I think it's good. Look, man.
I mean, you were all
I
over
was
the-
watching I was
I don't know
watching
what-
Andor the other day. My wife and I have been watching that TV show Andor on Disney Plus, right? Andor is 12 episodes, and I think they spent $290 million on 12 episodes, right? So
Were you guys dressed up when you were watching it?
no, we fully naked. So like, that's $25 million an episode. That's $25 million an hour, right? So we consume an hour of content. Our choices genuinely were, should we watch Andor or should we watch the latest Drew Gooden episode on YouTube? Drew Gooden is like this 20-something-year-old YouTuber that just sits in front of his computer and talks.
I thought it was the
Right?
former basketball player. He's played for the University of Kansas.
He might share a name. But what I'm saying is like one thing cost $25 million to make, and the thing that it was competing with for our attention was something that probably, like what is it? He spent like, $100 on his webcam.
So you decided to dress up as an elf and watch Andor?
Well, Troy, you're actually dressed like the elf. This is sort of ironic.
I think for the audio listeners, Troy is dressed up like Link.
He's
from
literally
the-
dressed like an elf.
from the Legend of Zelda.
But you were getting your dog. We were discussing this.
Troy looks like he's about to deliver me my NPC side quest.
You're supposed to wear that on Monday at the holiday party.
Yeah, where's the
AB is
parent?
going to be Santa.
Okay, you got me.
Let's discuss. I want to go to font wars. Actually, I don't want to save it to the end because
All right, let's go.
this is exciting,
Let's go.
and I know it's typeface because I know. Let me just start this. There's a type of person there, and I meant that. And Troy is one of them. They're the people who are not designers, but like are really militant about like making sure that they don't confuse font with typeface. It's some sort of thing. This is adjacent to the people who treat data as a plural. I'm going to use them interchangeably because regular people really don't give a shit.
I think the only people who are allowed to give a shit about it are typographers. Everybody
Absolutely.
else is a fucking
I do
poser.
not have a Foundry. I don't have one,
Right.
so it's fine. But we all like to talk about fonts. So this is the thing. Marco Rubio, who has like 1 million jobs in the Trump administration, and he's got a lot to do. He keeps ending all these wars, but there's more to go. And he sent out a memo, and he is ending the scourge that began a couple years ago when the State Department shifted from the classic default font, and I'm going to say it, Times New Roman. I mean, this is like, this is going back to classical Greece. I think it was the
To
font
monasteries, Brian. Right.
Yeah, and they went into this Calibri. It's a Microsoft font.
Yeah,
Supposedly it's more readable. I think what's very important is that Calibri it's a sans serif.
I mean, this is like
Yes.
inducting the Backstreet Boys into, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Which is
What is-
one of
what
the
is-
few
what
reasons
is-
to go to
which-
Cleveland.
I mean,
Where is this analogy going?
Calibri is a tragedy.
So Troy has strong feelings. So graphic design is Troy's passion, as we know.
Yeah.
But like Alex,
Yeah.
we have like a quote unquote real designer here.
Yeah.
So you
So
should tell
tell-
this to Alex. So and then I'll cosplay after that. Right?
So tell us how we should
Yeah.
think about fonts, typefaces, however you want to go with this. And
So let's just like clarify, like a typeface is like it's like Helvetica, right? Or Calibri is actually a typeface. The font is the actual like expression of that typeface into letters. So it's like,
it's too confusing.
Yeah, I know. But it doesn't fucking matter.
What do you think
Nobody
of
cares.
Roboto?
I actually really like Roboto. But
Garamond.
But here's the issue. Like, here's why this is kind of silly. Times New Roman is a serif font. Serif fonts, are optimized for paper. I mean, that's what
They have the little
make it-
feet, and that can blur.
Yeah, the little
on
feet, the
screens.
little like noses at the top of the letters. They're really optimized for reading on paper. And Calibri is optimized for reading on screen. As we're not in the 1930s anymore. Most of the stuff that we're reading is now on screen, and Calibri is actually like not a pretty font, but one that is very optimized for.
Hey,
for
Alex.
reading.
In
top
fact,
of-
in the 1930s, the Nazis banned a font called Fraktur because it looked too Jewish.
What?
Oh,
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Okay, this is a really bad precedent to be bringing up with this recent.
Yeah.
move.
And so, I don't know if millennials hated serifs or stuff like that. There's definitely been like, especially in logotype and branding, a deserification that happened, where a lot of kind of these types of fonts, like the one that, we created one for Airbnb, like we created our own custom font. And there was a modern look to fonts. But in the case of Calibri, that has nothing to do with it. Calibri is a font that is great at scale. It's easy to read on screens. And on top of that, it probably uses 10% less ink when printed. Like the thing about Times New Roman is that it actually uses more ink than a lot of these kind of more modern fonts, which have, weights that are like a little bit more sensible. So it's, once again, it's like the drama's been faked. It was an intelligent decision to switch to something like Calibri, and then it's been moved back, and serif looks more royal, I think.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, there is a
Time-
case to be made. Diplomacy is a profession and a field with a lot of tradition in it. I know that people are not speaking French still as the default language, but I think there is a case to be made that there's a tool for every job. I'm open to the idea of going back to a different font. I don't know if I would choose Times New Roman, but I think that the war on serifs probably has to end. I think serifs
But
got...
the war on serif
what
doesn't
is-
exist.
what is-
And if you
what do we-
actually look at
Yes, it does.
the-
The millennials came in with their Helvetica.
the millennials aren't, but the millennials, I mean, if you actually look at graphic design right now, it's gone fully back to like early 2000s Microsoft aesthetics, and full on
So the
like
serifs are back.
crazy stress. What's back? Everything's back at the same time, all at once. And there's even like these hyper serified fonts that you might have seen at your cool coffee shop or something like that. Fonts that are so exaggerated, so ornamental that they like blow out. So that stuff's moved on.
Let me ask you some questions, Alex, because I'm glad we're having this conversation. But I think that if you're a designer, the one thing that you learn is that probably the most important skill you can have is managing all the dimensions of type to make something look good.
Mm-hmm.
The weight, the kerning, are they condensed? Just how you communicate a feeling with type is as important as anything else, right? You would agree with that. And what Rubio said is it's that a serif font is generally perceived to connote tradition, formality, and ceremony. And what he also said is something like Calibri looks woke as fuck. And it's the product of DEI. And
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And so that's a bit extreme, right? But
is it a bit extreme? Really?
But like whenever we look at periods, whether it was like Bedoni that rose up through the Enlightenment, right, where it contrasted really, really sharp serifs, like this idea of reason and design, or the modernist period during the Industrial Revolution that had like Futura, and it really makes you feel something. Or like the Swiss with Helvetica and Universe and how it looks, grids and white space, and it gives you this sort of authority without ideology. Like every typeface, makes a statement. In fact, even the Obama campaign was really defined by a typeface, right? It was Gotham. I don't know if do you remember Gotham, Alex?
Yep.
And that was like the Obama phase. And so, you run the State Department and you don't want it to look like Calibri. I understand. I do.
Yeah, that's the most boomer shit I've ever heard, man. I'm sorry. Like, come on.
I
Jesus
understand.
Christ, right? Jesus Christ. They're all on Telegram telling each other
no
that.
one spent more time on type than you do. And I would,
I fully understand. And I think like reading small text in Times New Roman on your screen is a fucking nightmare. And, and these new fonts, including Calibri, are made easier to read. They're even designed like with people with dyslexia in mind, right? Like they're designed to be seen on tiny phones. And
that sounds deep.
Fine. I mean, that's maybe it, right? Like that's maybe it. Maybe it's too, and I think that's, once again, it's like to me, that shit is baby logic.
That's
like I want, there's a guy that we used to know when I lived in Jordan, and he had a very rich, he used to sell computers, and he had a very rich Saudi guy come in, and he said, I would like a computer. And he says, what computer do you want? He goes, the biggest one. Because he thought the biggest one would be the one that was the best. And I think this is like, make it Times New Roman. That is the fancy font.
Okay. We got to move on from this, but I've got a compromise that I think everyone can get behind. Use Georgia.
Okay.
I mean, Georgia's a pretty font. It's like,
I like
Georgia.
to read.
Is it? I don't know. Like, isn't it like made for screens, but it's still a serif? It's a clean serif.
It's better. Yeah, it is better.
All right, let's get behind Georgia. Let's move on.
This could be there's a lot of great fonts, Brandon. I actually dislike Calibri. It's visually not pretty, but in a paragraph, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Australia is banning social media for teens. This is a really difficult thing to do. I mean, Bill Clinton famously said trying to control the internet is like nailing Jell-O to a wall. I think it is indicative of a shift that we're seeing across a few fronts. For instance, cell phone bans at school are gaining steam after we discussed this on this podcast, I think like a year or so ago. I don't know if the correlation is causation.
Started here, yeah.
Absolutely started here. We were early yet again to another issue. But I do think that this is a canary in the coal mine in that there is, and I'm extrapolating here because I did not have children, but like that there, in talking with parents, there's a feeling of that the last generation of digital technologies had almost like hijacked their roles of being able to raise their children how they want to be able to raise them. And I think a lot of times people are seeing what is taking place with AI, and they see what has happened with social media, with gambling, with porn, etc. I don't want to become Erica Kirk here, but that there is inevitably going to be pressure for the government to step in. And it'll be interesting. Australia is not the United States for sure, but these things tend to gain steam. That's my feeling. Alex, what are your thoughts?
I agree with it. I feel like, we're raising our kid with like minimum access to screens. The research and the data showing what this does to children's minds, just even like forgetting all those kind of social pressures that come from the imagery, but just like the attention deficit that comes from like, going to the screen immediately. And right, there are a lot of the people that live here and that build these tools and sell it to everyone don't let their kids use it as advertised. They don't. They sell them to Waldorf schools and, make them touch grass and are much more strict about like social media usage because they know and they have, money to do that. But the thing that happens is, and why I think it needs to be legislated and very much like taken out of schools and things like that, is that it becomes nearly impossible for parents to take this stuff away from kids because because it's insidious, right? Like, even though like 80-90% of the consumption on these platforms is looking at other strangers' content, right? Like it's a media, it's an entertainment platform. It also becomes a primary way of communicating, so that if you don't have a phone very early on, and if you're not on Instagram and things like that, you actually like are disconnected from your friends. You know, you're a pariah, right? So parents are in a very difficult situation where they can't, decide to, pull this stuff away from my kids without like making massive compromises for those kids, right? And so unless you have the money to send into a school that like is very strict about this stuff, you end up being pulled into it. So I think that's why it needs to be legislated, because this whole thing, well, it should be a parent's choice to do it. That's bullshit, because we live in a society, and if you're taking something away that allows your kid to be part of the group and communicate with their friends, then actually it could be bad parenting. So I'm all for this type of stuff. So I think we should do more of it. This stuff is a fucking cancer, and it destroys adult brains. I mean, you're addicted to Twitter. Like, imagine if you had Twitter when you were 7, 9, 10 years old.
I would have been on it like 18 hours a day.
Of course. Of course. So yes, please,
All right. Troy,
Well, I would say what he said, and I would say, listen, we're like a Waldorf household, and I wish I would even have been stricter with my kids about it. Although they were growing up when social media was kind of nascent and becoming a bigger thing. But I have seen my youngest kid really, really struggle with her mental health around social media. And I think that this is long overdue. And I think actually what it signals, I think there'll be a kind of avalanche of pressure for governments to do something similar to Australia. And I think it is really more broadly should be very worrisome for Meta, because I think that even if we, kind of perceive them negatively today, I think more is coming. And I think that company is the sort of nexus of that pressure, right? Instagram in particular, but it will also, I guess, affect YouTube and TikTok. But the pressure is to get off the devices is, I think Alex makes a great point that it's much, much easier when it happens to everyone at the same time.
Yeah, and there's just all of these stories will keep coming out. I mean, the latest is like particularly teenagers who are being exploited through like sex extortion schemes. Like, they use AI to, I saw one recently, use AI to come up with, I guess, what looks like, an attractive, peer, and then to solicit, sexting photos from that peer using other teens that they've exploited. And then the kids end up getting threatened with exposure. And there have been cases, unfortunately, where these kids have taken their own lives. And this is going to,
and shitty stuff is happening on Roblox as well. If you want to hear like a fucking train wreck of an interview, the Hardfork guys had a CEO interview with the Roblox guy. The thing is, like, as parents, we've become terrified of letting our kids walk to school or go to the park or the grocery store by themselves. But we pump the internet straight into their fucking veins, thinking like nothing bad is gonna happen. It's insanity. It's fucking crazy. Like, I mean, I don't use TikTok, but we use it for work. And once in a while, I'll open my burner TikTok account, and then and the basic stuff that it just feeds to me, not knowing who I am, is insanity.
And I think this is going to have a larger impact because the Trump administration and our deal guy friend David Sachs are really trying to avoid any kind of AI regulation taking place at the state level. And all of these social media things are going to happen on the state level. Even Ron DeSantis is saying you can't preempt states from doing what we want to do on behalf of our citizens. So I think AI regulation is going to get pulled into this for sure. One quick thing, I wanted to get your take on what Shopify is doing with AI and bringing commerce to AI, because I think this is interesting. I think just a couple data points. Like one data point is it's coming out that therapy is a big use for AI. That has all kinds of social implications, but it also has a lot of business implications. I don't think people getting over their angst with an AI chatbot they're not showing a lot of intent, commercial intent in that. And, these engines, search is driven by commercial intent. And it'll be interesting to see how these AI engines end up monetizing by facilitating commerce. Discuss what Shopify is doing with this quote unquote agentic commerce.
Well, first of all, I guess I notice this when I go to Canada. They're like the pride of Canada, right? And
they've replaced BlackBerry.
Yeah. It seems to me that they are just executing extremely well. And that story tells us something about AI and kind of new advertising and how you fight the sort of mega platforms. So there's a lot in it, right? And now what Shopify does is they do these sort of seasonal announcements, and they have this thing called the Winter 26 edition. And it's like all of these improvements across the platform that are really interesting. Now, why I like it is because, looking down Amazon as Shopify is a bit intimidating. And I think that they're a kind of platform that are enabling, small and medium-sized direct sellers to go head to head with Amazon. And that's impressive. And what they're also showing is that, we can speculate and say that, AI is great for therapy, but what does that do for our economy? Like, its benefits are elusive. But then you start to look at how someone like Shopify is building it into a platform to make the sale of, products and services and all of the support underneath of that, much more efficient. And so they just do cool things. Like they'll allow you with their new platform they made a bunch of announcements, but one of the things was you can mimic the behavior of a human being, moving through your commerce website, with their platform. So you can watch everything that someone would do and optimize around that. You can elect to have your SKUs show up in any AI chat, right? Whether that's like Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini. I don't know if they allow integration into Gemini.
Perplexity, yes. I don't think Gemini.
But that's like a real use case, right? Like I'm searching for something, I'm doing comparative shopping in chat, and I can find the SKU and transact there or transact wherever I want. But like having my SKUs appear in AI is really sensible. Through their shop app is interesting because I end up using it a lot and I kind of didn't mean to, but every time I order from anywhere, all of the delivery data and the notifications are into the shop app somehow. They just materialize. And so then what they're doing with the shop app is they're trying to create an additional shopping experience connected to the utility of tracking your product and the delivery by showing you other vendors. Now we're also seeing with Shopify the network effect of if you don't have a product and I've searched for it on your Shopify shopping site, it'll show you products from other people that also use Shopify, which is just advertising, but good advertising, right? Like product recommendations as advertising is really good. And then they've also, started to make really significant improvements by allowing me to connect my point of sale to my online experience in ways that are totally seamless. And all the other stuff that makes, commerce hard, like inventory management and shipping and all that stuff. Like it's a really impressive platform. I think that is leveling the playing field for smaller providers that want to compete with Amazon and giving them ways to find new customers and allowing them to use AI in ways that are practical. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, their position has always been arming the rebels, and you can either be a serf on Amazon and be subject to their whims. Amazon is famous or notorious for then competing with you. And I think Shopify is interesting because they've always had to try to basically be on the side of the merchant, the small guy, and that's a great positioning at the same time. But it makes it really difficult for them to tap into those network effects without centralizing everything.
Yeah.
And that's why the Shop app has always been fascinating to me, in that they took delivery notifications, and they weren't trying to like aggregate the entire shopping experience. They took this little like sliver of it. And then, how they add value, I think, is completely different than obviously than an approach like an Amazon would take. So
does it make that ring on your phone? I always know that ring that the shop app makes.
Oh, I turn off all notifications. The notifications are for losers. That's why I disappear from WhatsApp.
You really disappeared this week. You had me worried.
I like disappear.
You were completely off the grid until Thursday morning.
Yeah, I was in flow state.
Okay.
Why don't we get into good product?
We can go to good product and be respectful to people's time.
Let's be respectful.
Okay. Troy, his good product is this binder where he put all these cutouts of photos of David Zaslav.
All right, Troy, good product.
Yeah. Are you done, Alex? Are you done with the Zaslav?
Never.
I don't know where this came up. This is a little bit of a winding road. I've decided that, there's different sort of archetypes of podcasts, right? I'm a little off topic here, but there are, stuff like this where three people talk about stuff, and now and then you'll have a guest, but generally speaking, that's not the sell. That's not the appeal. And I think that when people confuse the two, and it's like when you have a guest, I like it when you do what Rick Rubin does, which is you just ask questions and you get out of the way and let the person talk. And I find that to be a really good format. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I was reminded of this listening to Tyler Cohen, who just basically, fires questions at people. He's got a podcast called Conversations with Tyler, which is not my good product. But Tyler's, like a polymath, and he's really smart, and he asks good questions. And I think that makes, particularly when you have a good guest, makes for good listening. He had this guy on, and, he's a New York guy from Queens. Gaurav is his name, Kapadia, and he's a prominent New York investor and philanthropist and art collector, whatever. Anyway, he's really into craft, and he's starting this new magazine just as a kind of passion project. And I think it's called Totei, Totei, which is a Japanese word for apprentice or apprenticeship. And it's really about the love and respect for people that make beautiful things, whatever that thing is. Could be a piece of technology, could be, a typeface, could be, a piece of art. And I thought that's a nice idea. It's great that you can, spend money on a print magazine for no reason. And, the world benefits when people do, kooky stuff like that. But then I got home that night, and for some reason, I had set aside on Apple TV this show called Mr. Scorcese, which I wasn't going to watch actually, and I decided to. And it's a 5-part documentary about the great Scorcese. And it is a remarkable documentary. Have you guys watched it?
No.
And the reason I connect those two things is because he's the ultimate auteur. Like, he is someone who was, grew up in the Lower East Side on Elizabeth Street, and, saw all the wise guys, and was surrounded by, shared, a small apartment with, relatives, and, just played on the streets and all that kind of stuff. And always sketched and always wanted to be a filmmaker. And, through his history with Hollywood was really rocky. He would make a film and actually was denied an Academy Award for a long, long time until The Departed. But when you look at the films he made, and, the kind of energy he got to it, and how he ultimately, by the way, got outside of the studio financing system to be able to make the films he wanted through his partnership with DiCaprio, and when they made Wolf of Wall Street, which is really a movie about complete debauchery that no studio would have allowed him to make. It's just like, he's just got this incredible history of defying the commercial people that wanted him to tone everything down and not kind of, bring this reflection of the world that he saw, and this overlap between saints and sinners. And, everything he did was informed by his faith and just his love of showing both showing the dark side of humanity. And I mean, just look at the films like Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, The Departed, Mean Streets, The Irishman, Casino, Wolf of Wall Street, Last Temptation of Christ, blah, blah, blah. So I absolutely loved watching this. And normally it's hard to recommend a 5-part documentary about one guy, but if you're going to watch one, this is the one.
What do you think he thinks about David Zaslav?
Him and David are friends, I think. Yeah.
Well, I give this Gaurav guy, who is the CEO of MongoDB, right, a lot of credit.
No, that's not him. That's not him.
I understand that's Scorcese, but I want to circle back on that because, he made his money as a financializer, and then the guilt weighed on his soul for the emptiness of that. And so, after building databases, he decided to...
That's not him, dude. That's not the same guy. This guy was a hedge fund guy. But he actually did.
But also riddled with guilt then.
Okay.
Right. And he had to become an art collector. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the path that these should go on, I think.
Right. Do you have a favorite Scorsese movie?
I don't know.
Alex?
Goodfellas.
Great movie. That's the first thing.
I liked Goodfellas. I haven't seen it in a long time. I'm going to the different
Very
Scorsese
rewatchable.
movies.
And I think Ray Liotta is just like gripping to watch on. He's like his intensity.
I didn't like The Irishman, that's for sure. That lasted too long. It could have been 2 hours.
Casino. Have you watched Casino?
Yeah, Casino's a great movie.
Have you seen The Departed?
Yeah, another good movie. Raging Bull,
A remake.
classic.
A remake.
What do you guys got? Any good products up your sleeve this week, Brian? Do you travel, on JetBlue or something? And what happened?
I mean, I don't know if this is a good product exactly, but I did notice in New York City that SaaS-vertising is really taking over the subways. Every tech industry, I feel like, moves as a pack, and it's really difficult to advertise SaaS. Rippling has these ads. It's around SAD. That's their concept. It's software as a disservice. So basically, your other SaaS is doing you a disservice, and that makes you sad. That's the concept.
Yeah.
And there's
Remember when advertising used to be art?
Well, it is art because there's Clay. Do you know Clay? Clay has some ads going up, and it says Michelangelo had marble, GTM has clay.
I think you guys are starting to see the ads that we in San Francisco have been seeing everywhere.
It's moved.
Every single billboard here.
It's moved east.
Right, that's true. You guys see this ad that everybody's incensed about, the McDonald's ad that they pulled that was made?
The AI ad. Well, they turned off the comments. Did they pull it?
I think
a TBWA agency in Europe did this.
And everybody
AI
naturally reacts and says it's AI slop. The ad doesn't look that bad to me, actually.
Why do you think that reaction?
The concept is terrible.
Do you think it's because the concept is terrible?
The concept is the most terrible time of the year. That's a stupid idea. And the respite from that is to go to McDonald's? That's a terrible idea.
Really?
It's chaotic out there.
Okay.
Your family's around.
Okay.
I'm going to go to McDonald's?
Yeah. What? Mental health break.
I'm hungry.
Egg McMuffin would be great. Why do you think that the reaction was so negative? Because I don't think it's because the concept was off. I think AI content is, people feel uneasy with AI created content. When I read AI writing and find maybe I'm sensitive to this, and usually I read it on LinkedIn. If you're using AI, by the way, to use LinkedIn, you're losing doubly there. It's creepy. It's unsavory, as you would say. And I think that's a problem for this world that the tech companies want to shove us in. I mean, people have a visceral reaction against AI content.
Yeah.
People try to hide it.
I don't think that most people give a crap. I really don't.
Then tell me why everyone tries to hide the fact that they're using AI.
In writing?
In everything. So I had a guy I know, he works at a big bank, right, in marketing, okay? And he told me how on the one hand, he's got, people at the company are telling them, you've got to use AI, you've got to use AI, you've got to use AI. And then he's getting feedback that his decks are too obviously created by AI. He's like, I didn't even use AI to create the decks. Why is he getting instructions not to make sure things don't look too AI?
Well, Brian, it's obviously people react to it because it's anti-human, and because people think they're smart when they say things like AI slop. I think that it sits on a continuum of kind of artificiality that exists in communications and entertainment, and it's not a new thing. And when I watch that ad, I think, man, it's kind of entertaining. And I don't sort of dissect it for, is it AI or isn't it? It's like, does it work as a piece of communication?
Okay, so does that fade?
The brief, make an ad that shows Christmas as the most terrible time of the year, and McDonald's as the solution to that is the problem. The brief is the problem. And by the way, the Coke ad that everybody freaked out about is in heavy rotation, you'll notice, right? It's on every football game on repeat. And, to me, it's like, it's a Coke ad. It's reminding me that it's the holidays and I should stock up on Coke.
Okay, so this fades just like people reacted against Photoshop all the time. And now there's the real world Photoshop with Ozempic and plastic surgery. So who cares anyway? This ends up fading as a thing that anyone gives a shit whether something was created with AI or not.
Yeah, but the battle between people versus algorithms is going to be a long-term battle. And we will look for any way we can to assert our humanness on things. But to me, an advertisement from McDonald's that basically replaces special effects with AI is a nothing burger.
So the New York Times had an article that basically people are imitating AI content increase. Like even if you're not using AI, you end up writing like AI and just thinking like AI. And I think that is an interesting one because all of us are not all of us, many of us are trying not to give over all of our discernment. And I don't know, I don't want to give it over to some artificial, some toaster that imitates thinking. I just don't, it just feels wrong. It feels like you're just denying your essential interiority as a human being.
Okay, I agree with that.
Yeah. All right.
I think that the flip side of it is that more people are going, and the world is going to lean into humanness in all of its weirdness. And you'll get more CEOs that, look like Alex Carr.
I saw an earlier interview with the guy. This is a recent development. Like in his earlier interviews,
he looks a little coked up or something. Like
he acted like totally normal, like a CEO person
in the old video. Yeah.
Yeah. Before, he got incredibly rich. So they're really leaning into this because it's trollvertising is very I guess, in the tech world. So they started this neurodivergence scholarship, and they said that he came up with it while he was cross-country skiing. And I think that was a nod to cocaine because a lot of people felt like his fidgety performance indicated someone who had been in the wellness room not to record a cheeky podcast, but for other purposes. Can you imagine going to the Times Center and doing lines before you go on stage? I'm assuming that didn't happen, but that's hardcore.
Yeah, I mean, the gentleman, business person or politician, we'll bounce back to it. But we're in a period now where, the world has been influenced by, Trump and Elon Musk, where people believe that the way to break through and the way to seem authentic and the way to seem like you're a sort of, genius autist is to act erratically.
Yeah. I think there will be a correction coming. I don't think we'll go all the way back to Mitt Romney, but I think the correction is coming.
Right.
I mean, Mittens has never looked better, to be honest with you.
That's it for this episode of People vs. Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
All right, let's leave it there. I'm looking forward to Monday, Troy.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
All right, bye.